by the hijacked incoming plane. A ball of flame envelops the second of the World Trade Center tower. Untold death and destruction, as after being hit by the second plane, the second tower eventually collapsed after both of these twin towers collapsed. Now Building 7 in the World Trade Center, after being evacuated, we're told, collapsed. In the debris below, people still trapped. This is new videotape that had not been seen before. Dateline Washington, the Pentagon now says, and we've checked and double-checked this, 100 people believed killed or injured. There's no differentiation. We still don't know how many killed, how many injured at the Pentagon, but the Defense Department says its best available information is 100 people believed killed or injured at the Pentagon. And while the Pentagon symbolically was one of the two targets today, that the death, the wounding, and the damage at the Pentagon, nothing to compare with what's happened with the World Trade Center complex. Paramedics waiting to be sent into the rubble today were told that once the smoke clears, it's going to be massive bodies, quote, unquote. That's Brian Stark, an ex-Navy paramedic who volunteered to help. Stark said paramedics were told that, quote, hundreds of police and firefighters are missing from the ranks of those sent in to respond to the initial crash. Now, mind you, this is only one person speaking. New York police and firemen rushed to the scene this morning, as is their destiny when they volunteer for such work. They place themselves in harm's way. And it has been thought throughout the day that certainly some police and firemen would turn up missing, and according to this paramedic, he says he was told, quote, that hundreds of police and firefighters are missing. Let me caution you, we do not know that for a fact. And as we've said repeatedly, and I say again now without apology, sometimes the first information you get from the scene turns out to be wrong information. We do our best to nail down the facts. We'd rather be last with information than be wrong. We try to give information to you as quickly as we can get it. In this kind of situation, I know you will understand when I say there's no way that we can do it perfectly. We do our very best. And our number one job, the number one job here is accuracy. Now, among the other facts that we know is that the president is on his way to Washington.
Interdisciplinary Center, it's a university in Israel.
Are you in Israel right now?
No, I'm in San Francisco, as a matter of fact.
All right, you're in San Francisco. All right. Tell me what, as a person who studies terrorism, who fights terrorism, what are your thoughts and what are your feelings as you watch the devastation that's taken place here today and in Washington?
Well, I think that my thoughts and feelings are not different from the thoughts of any American citizen today. It's a combination of horror and sadness altogether. Trying to analyze it from a counterterrorism expert, I would say that maybe this is a combination of primitive attack and very sophisticated one together.
Could you elaborate on that, please? Because we've been hearing about the sophistication of this particular attack from other experts.
Okay, so let's start with the primitive side of this attack. I refer to the technological side. The terrorists probably didn't need to use any sophisticated weapon to smuggle huge amount of explosives and so on and so forth. And therefore, from a technological point of view, this is a primitive attack. But I do agree that we can see here a very sophisticated attack, and I refer especially to the planning of the planner of this attack.
Are you talking about how getting the pilots on board, how about getting the planes? Yes.
Exactly. I believe that this kind of terrorist attack needed to be planned long ago. The people has to be trained, and we are talking about several units which should have been attacking the airplanes simultaneously. It's a combination of two kinds of terrorist attacks at the same time. One of them is kidnapping the airplanes, and this is a separate attack for his own. And the other one is using this as a flying bomb into a suicide attack. Planning all of that, it's really sophisticated, and I believe that there are not a lot of terrorist organizations who are capable to do that.
Well, what terrorist organization do you think is capable of it? Osama bin Laden, of course, his name has come up. Does this have his handwriting on it as far as you're concerned?
I would say that, of course, we should not jump to conclusions until we have concrete intelligence information. But as I said before, there are very few terrorist organizations which are able to execute simultaneously such an attack. As a matter of fact, 4 attacks altogether. Probably, I believe they had, I can guess that they had pilots with them, because it seems to me very far-fetched to believe that any pilot would be ready to crash into the World Trade Center.
Well, let's focus on that for just a moment, Dr. Gonor. It appears that what we're hearing is that this caught everybody by surprise. In fact, more than one congressman has already cited some sort of intelligence breakdown in the fact that there was no warning of this. So let's get to that issue of...
There's a lot of people around, or we feel vulnerable. And that's something that I have a concern about for individuals who are going into those kind of environments. Are we going to be able to function at work? Are we going to be able to concentrate, do what we need to do? Because our lives still need to move on, and we have to heal.
We want to feel secure. Most of all, we want our children to feel secure. How do we deal with our children in this matter?
Well, it's important to understand the child that you're talking to. Some children are very emotionally...
To go, how quickly it went. These home videos, taken from across the way, from a place that once had a spectacular view of a spectacular New York skyline. And the smoke told the story. Scott Pelley will bring us up to date on the situation in Lower Manhattan. Scott, it's an unsettling moment to see, again, different views of those buildings collapsing and indeed the aircraft hitting the second building. But what's the situation down there right now?
Dan, the smoke that you see rising behind me now is from World Trade Center building number 7, which collapsed about 15 minutes ago. This is a very large building. It's 47 stories tall, at least half a block wide. This would have been a catastrophe in its own right, Dan. The building has been on fire all day since the initial attack. About an hour ago, I was down there with a CBS News camera crew, and we were talking to firefighters and police officers. Building number 7 was completely involved in flame. Flames were shooting out of the building. Large panes of glass were falling into the street. The firefighters explained that there was nothing they could do to try to put the fire out because it was just simply far too dangerous, and they warned us an hour ago that the building might collapse, and indeed that is what has come to pass. Apparently, some of the city's emergency operations were located in that building. The fire department is telling us now that they have lost some of their communications at this point. The building, of course, being on fire, being at the scene of the attack, had been evacuated much, much earlier. There was no one in the building at the time that it collapsed about 15 minutes ago. However, I will tell you that when we left there an hour ago, there were several New York City police officers and firefighters down there making sure that no one else came into the area. Dan?
Scott Pelley on the scene reporting live from Lower Manhattan. Now we're going to show you again videotape of World Trade Center Building 7. This is the one that just collapsed within the last hour and a half, 2 hours at the outside. This was a 47-story tall building. This is a scene on the ground just after this building came tumbling down. And yet new bellows of the horrible smoke. And the stench from the smoke began to fill Lower Manhattan all anew. going to re-rack this videotape for you because what we intend to show you, and we have on videotape, is the collapse of that World Trade Center building number 7, which housed Salomon Brothers and Smith Barney. I look away because our friend here, who's an eyewitness and who worked in the building. And by the way, let's get a picture of another, you know, he wouldn't call himself a hero. Here's a man in our studio who's given us some eyewitness reports here today, who calmly got together, led people out of the building. It was his responsibility. He took it upon himself to get people out and then get himself out. Was there actual panic as you did then?
There were panic among the staff, yes. But the important thing, everybody got out on time before.
Well, you won't say it, but I will. You got everybody out.
Yeah.
David Martin is outside the Pentagon. David.
Dan, the U.S. is trying to do two very different things here simultaneously. One is to hunker down and button up and protect against the possibility of still another attack, and that's why the Pentagon has put all of its bases on the highest state of alert, and the State Department has put all American embassies around the world on the highest state of alert. But at the same time, the U.S. wants to create an impression, at least, of a quick return to normalcy, and that is one of the reasons why the president is coming back to Washington tonight. You know, he spent the day moving about from military base to military base as much as he would in the event of a nuclear war. That now is ended, and they are bringing the president back to Washington to try and create this impression of a return to normalcy. But obviously, as you can see behind me, we are a long, long way from normal. One of the obvious questions here is, who did this? And the early suspicions are focused on Osama bin Laden, the terrorist who seems to have made it his life's calling to attack Americans around the world. And in this case, I think, in contrast to previous cases, there is very little doubt that there will be some form of military retaliation. What form it will take and when it might happen, I think it's much too early to tell, but I think it is all but inevitable.
David Martin, 2 questions. The last quote we had from any official at the Pentagon was that 100 people were believed killed or injured. Any later information about that?
The only number I've heard, Dan, which is 20 dead, but no one expected it to end there. The services that had offices in that part of the building have asked all of the people assigned there to call in so they know who made it out. And there are still, among all the services, hundreds of unaccounted for, but you don't know if that's because they didn't make it out or simply because they haven't called in. But if you just take a fully loaded commercial airliner, you know that the death toll is going to go much higher than 20, no matter who was caught in the building.
Well, that's a good point. And the belief is that American Flight 77, headed from Dulles Airport near Washington to Los Angeles, a Boeing 757, this is the plane that's believed to have crashed in the Pentagon, had 58 passengers and 6 crew. And while one might hope and pray that somebody among those 58 passengers, 6 crew survived, it seems highly unlikely. So there, right there, you would have, you know, in the 60s, the number of people dead, killed at the Pentagon. And the wife of U.S. Solicitor General Theodore Olson was aboard the jetliner that crashed into the Pentagon. She called him as the plane was being hijacked. She twice called her husband and described some details of the hijacking, including, now this is Barbara Olson, an attorney, very intelligent woman, the wife of the U.S. Solicitor General, the new one, Theodore Olson. She said that the attackers were using knife-like instruments. When she called her husband, she said the attackers, this is on the plane, that would have been the American Airlines Flight 77. She said that the attackers were using knife-like instruments. Now, the officials who quoted this conversation to the woman's husband declined to give any further details of the conversation. In a brief telephone interview from his home, Theodore Olson said his wife was on the plane and that the crash in the Pentagon And he said, I wish it wasn't so, but it is. Olson argues President Bush's case is before the Supreme Court. We're going to go back to David Martin at the Pentagon. David, I understand you have some additional information or insight, and then I have an additional question for you, please.
You were talking about the plane that crashed into the Pentagon. Someone made the point to me that all of these planes were cross-country flights that had just taken off, meaning they were all carrying full loads of fuel, which would obviously increase the destruction that they caused when they crashed into a building. Whether that was part of the plan or whether it just worked out that way, we of course don't know, but it would certainly indicate, at least initially, that considerable thought and planning went into this attack.
Indeed, David, including that they hit the World Trade Center at the height of morning rush hour, right on the clock. First one building, then the other, right at the very height of rush hour here in New York City. David, stand by because I have some questions about possible U.S. responses. You say, you know, the U.S. will respond. The how and why of that I'd like to discuss with you. But first, we want to go through a sequence of pictures of what happened here in New York today at the World Trade Center, including two pieces of videotape that CBS News obtained exclusively and we've shown only in the last half hour or so. So this sequence of events will not necessarily be in order, but this to review for you and give you the latest picture information we have is the way it was this morning between 9 and 11 a.m. New York time, Eastern time. One plane has hit the upper tier, but watch the left-hand corner of your screen. The second World Trade Tower has not yet been hit. It's about 9 a.m. Here comes the plane, very high speed, cuts almost through the building. Great balls of fire, tremendous bellows of smoke. The voices you hear in the background of people in the home or the place where these pictures were taken. So the second building was hit. Now, note the plane went in at about, that aircraft hit that tower at floor about 71. The first building was hit, 90 or above, say. So both buildings are now smoke and flame. Now, different view. Both buildings are aflame. And then the building that was hit second comes tumbling down. That was the one where the airplane came in particularly quickly and hit the building at about floor 71. The Chrysler building in the background. Now the second tower, which was actually hit first by American Flight 11, begins to crumble. Disappear. And since then, the most recent collapse, which happened just a short while ago, Building 7, a 47-story building as part of the World Trade Center complex, collapsed. That building had been, we were told, completely evacuated. But the fate of people on the ground, including rescue workers, as it came tumbling down, we simply don't know. But it had been threatening to collapse, had been on the verge of collapse for a long while, so perhaps most of the area had been evacuated, but who could have anticipated this kind of incredibly dense and fast-moving smoke, which covers many blocks in New York. And like some white monster, came quickly down side streets and major thoroughfares. Now stay with me here. Stay with us here. CBS, this is another, see the plane? This is another view, more videotape. Plane.
Against the backdrop of gentle blue sky, the terrorist arrow pierces the heart of a city and a nation.
Oh. Those two sequences we should see again.
One more horrifying than the next.
and we will show you.
This is the United Airlines flight 175.
Some of this video has just now become available. And in the aftermath, well, if you've been with us, you know what happens. We're going to try to re-rack up. That's the opposite side of the second tower hit. Now, we had different views during the day, but this was photographed from that side of the building. Now, we're going to re-cue that sequence of videotape. This includes new videotape material obtained by CBS News over the last hour, hour and a half. We've shown some of it. Now, this is the latest new video we have. You see the plane coming in high speed, aiming for the mid-level, and hits it.
The heart of a city and a nation.
That was the second flight, United Flight 175, and this is the reverse side of the building. See, the plane actually pierced the building
There were several angles.
virtually came out the other side.
Horrifying in the next.
Yet another view, the plane hitting.
175 out of Boston.
It's almost like the building swallowed the plane. Yeah.
Yes. Here you see this aircraft below. Did you see that? But to be looking closely on the right-hand side to see it hitting there. And indeed, Russ Mitchell said it's almost as if the building swallowed the plane and then belched back up. Well, nobody's ever seen photographs like that. There's nothing like this has ever happened before. We go to David Martin.
Dan, we were talking earlier about trying to give the appearance of a return to normalcy. Well, now we have one other appearance of normalcy, which is the fact that Defense Secretary Rumsfeld will give a briefing later this evening in the briefing room in the Pentagon. In other words, we're going to be allowed to go back into the Pentagon, and obviously as that is designed in part to give a show that you can damage the Pentagon, but you can't sink it, that business continues in there as normal. Now, obviously, one of the pieces of business that's going to be continuing now is planning for some sort of military retaliation, although I think it's much too early for us to really have any good idea of what that might look like.
David Martin, we're going to go to Bob Orr, has some new information in just a moment, but once in the Far East, an intelligence operative who was talking about revenge for things, terrorist events, used the quote, he said it was an old Oriental expression, revenge is best served cold, which the thought was that you don't want to enrage, lash out immediately. Now, given the fact, and it is the fact, that after the 1998 attacks on the U.S. embassies in East Africa, the United States government responded in fairly quickly with 2 separate cruise missile attacks, mini missiles, at Sudan and Afghanistan. My question to you, David Martin, when you talk about some kind of retaliation is certain, what has been the thinking before this happened about the advisability of responding immediately or waiting and, in effect, serving revenge cold?
Well, they have 2 lines. One is that we will strike in a time and place of our choosing, and that supports the argument that you don't have to do something right away. But after those cruise missile attacks on the Sudan and Afghanistan, the argument was that that was not retaliation, that was preemption, because Osama bin Laden was planning further attacks against the U.S., and they had to disrupt his operations. So I can see that that argument would apply here as well. The U.S. could say it has intelligence that this was not all the attacks that were planned, that Osama bin Laden had further attacks planned, and they had to act quickly to upset these plans. On the other hand, I can see them wanting to take their time and get it right so that we don't have another largely ineffectual strike as we did following the embassy bombings. The strikes did not get Osama bin Laden, and obviously did not have any lasting impact on his operations, since he has been behind most of the threats that the U.S. has had to react to over the years. And of course, if the evidence indicates that he was behind this as well, then of course we really didn't do much to stop him with that earlier strike. And I think all that would argue for some very large military response, perhaps including going after him on the ground, which of course is always risky because of casualties. But I think the proportion of the offense, I mean, let's face it, this was the worst sneak attack on America since Pearl Harbor. And when you put it in that context, I think the American public would support taking casualties to go after the person who was behind that. But all that's still pretty far down the road, Dan.
Indeed, David Martin speaking live from the Pentagon. President Bush will address the nation tonight. CBS News will cover it live. We'll be staying on the air live. Very quickly, Russ Mitchell has some new information about attending to the wounded in New York.
That's right, Dan. The Health and Human Services Department has activated a national medical emergency system. This is an unprecedented move that will dispatch about 7,000 volunteer doctors, nurses, pharmacists, and other pharmacists of the medical staff to areas affected by Tuesday's attacks, which of course will be New York and Washington. The timetable for this, Dan, I'm told, is immediately.
Russ Mitchell, 7,000 volunteer doctors sought from around the nation to come help in New York with what is a massive healing and tending to the dead and wounded operation, which will go on for weeks, if indeed not months. Now, Bob Orr in Washington has a new insight on this information from Barbara Olson, who was aboard one of the planes hijacked, about knife-wielding or knife-type instruments in the aircraft. And Orr's going to put that in perspective for you just at the top of the hour. Now, at the top of every hour and at the half-hour mark, we try to bring you up to date on the latest video we have, the latest pictures we have, the latest information that we have, and we'll be doing that just past the top of the hour on many of these CBS stations. The aircraft involved this morning, American Airlines Flight 11, Boston to Los Angeles. That was the first of two planes to hit a World Trade Center building. The second was United Flight 175, Boston to Los Angeles. That was the second plane to hit a World Trade Center building. American Flight 77, Dulles, near Washington to Los Angeles. This is the plane that hit near the Pentagon. Then United Flight 93, Newark, New Jersey to San Francisco, is the plane that apparently went down in Somerset County in western Pennsylvania. They believe they might get the cockpit recorder from that, and if they do, it could be valuable information. You're watching continuing CBS News coverage of the attack on America. Dan Rather with Russ Mitchell and the worldwide resources of CBS News with our continuing coverage of this historic day of infamy in the United States of America. An audacious and devastatingly effective sneak attack on the United States today. Terrorists crashed two hijacked airliners into the World Trade Center towers, and they destroyed both of those towers. And as a consequence of that, then later this afternoon, World Trade Center Building 7 collapsed. World Trade Center 5 is in danger of collapsing. The terrorists brought down not only the twin 110-story World Trade Center towers, they also slammed a hijacked jetliner into the Pentagon. At least 100 people killed and wounded in the attack on the Pentagon. We don't have facts about any of the killed and wounded. We simply know that in New York, both the police and New York City Mayor Rudolph Giuliani say that there's tremendous loss of life in and around the World Trade Center. And at the Pentagon, as I say, the best available information is at least 100 killed and wounded. A fourth jetliner, we mentioned it earlier, was apparently hijacked. It crashed in Pennsylvania as part of the clearly, carefully timed attacks. There was early report that maybe that aircraft had gone down near Camp David, the presidential retreat in Maryland. It turns down, it went down instead in southwestern Pennsylvania. President Bush was in Florida while all this was happening on an out-of-Washington trip. He said he was returning to Washington. He did not. Instead, it was decided he should go to the air base near Shreveport, Louisiana. He went there, made another statement to the American people, then took off, destination unknown, wound up in Nebraska at one of the most secure air bases that the United States has. He got a briefing there, and then the decision was made that he should come back to Washington, and President Bush will address the nation from tonight. Now, this just in, Kabul, capital of Afghanistan. Explosions are reported near Kabul, Afghanistan. Whether those explosions are directly linked to what happened in the United States of America today, we do not know. But in the background is the last time Osama bin Laden and his what's called terrorist network struck, the United States within hours responded with cruise missile attacks against what was said to be Osama-related targets in Sudan and in Afghanistan. Now, I repeat, what we know and all we know out of Kabul, Afghanistan, where information is very hard to come by and the facts are always few, and information rarely pure and never simple in Afghanistan, explosions are reported near Kabul, Afghanistan. We'll be monitoring that situation as we go along here. I thought we had another piece of information, but not so. Now, let me pause, take a breath. Those are the facts, the central facts as we know them. Want to show you the best available pictures we have of the situation on this attack on America. That at least was the plan. Let me pause and take in some instructions. If there are other instructions, I'm not going to that video. Now's the time to tell me in the control room. If so, then let's go to the video. All right, we're going to replay those pictures. Stay with us here, folks. This is live television, not always the neatest. Look at this aircraft, the speed with one World Trade Center has already been hit. This plane is coming in, midsection hit. Oh. And then opposite side view. You can see that plane go in and it pierced, you know, seemingly all the way through the building. This was the second building hit. That plane believed to be United Flight 175. Another view from another side. And you can see how far some of the debris was immediately thrown. Now both buildings are smoking runs, people desperately trying to get out. This is yet another picture of the plane hitting. Some of this video we did not have available this morning. Now, however high the death and wounded toll turns out to be from the World Trade Center, it would have been immeasurably higher if so many people had not kept their heads and calmly but quickly evacuated the building. Some of them walking down, you know, as many as at least 50, sometimes 60 floors to get out of the World Trade Center. Now, there are pictures available of the explosions in Kabul, Afghanistan. Now, we'll show you these CNN pictures from Kabul. Now, whether this was from a missile strike or not, we cannot confirm. The Afghans clearly believe that these explosions were caused by the United States. This is not much of a picture, but from Kabul, Afghanistan, on short notice, pretty remarkable stuff. Now, what happened in Kabul, Afghanistan, let me again emphasize that we're not at all certain of the information. There were reports of explosions, reports of anti-aircraft fire. Then we do not know whether any of this is connected with events in the United States today. Now, the Taliban, the radical and fundamentalist Muslim group in control of most of Afghanistan, has repeatedly refused to help the United States bring Osama bin Laden to justice, and Osama bin Laden, at last report, was being hidden in Afghanistan. The Taliban's position, which they stated today, was that we don't have any evidence that Osama bin Laden's been doing anything. And the Taliban leadership today, early in the day, this was their words, another pretty big explosion there in Kabul. Well, let me break off and let's listen to this reporter.
Us hearing the detonation at the hotel is about the same duration, so I am using that as an estimate to gauge that those missiles again are falling in the area of the airport. First we're seeing the flash, and then we hear the detonation some several seconds afterwards, and they appear to be coming from that airport area, in some cases several miles away from us.
This reporter is saying that missiles have indeed struck Kabul, Afghanistan. We have no independent confirmation of that, but the reporter on scene, Mr. Robertson, says that this is a missile attack in Kabul.
Those reflections of missiles landing elsewhere, the flashes as they explode and reflecting off the clouds, but it's not a good indication. We certainly don't hear any detonations coming from that particular direction at this time. The anti-aircraft fire that we were seeing a little while ago is not coming up from the city. The city, apart from the detonations we were hearing a few minutes ago, appears very, very calm. The visibility here is excellent. We can see all the way across the city. It lies on a plain that's surrounded by the mountains here in Kabul. We have high mountains to the right. These mountains were used by the Mujahideen as vantage points for shelling the city several years ago during the Mujahideen infighting in Kabul. The last 5 years, the Taliban have been in control of this city, have been trying to extend their control over and across Afghanistan. And the Foreign Minister this evening...
That is Nick Robertson of CNN reporting live from Kabul in Afghanistan, where, as you could see, and he described, it appears that at least an oil refinery tank of some sort is on fire near the Kabul...
Well, what we know, and let's pause and tell you that there's a lot we don't know about those pictures of flames in Kabul, Afghanistan. What we know is that explosions were reported in Kabul, then flames broke out. The CNN reporter indicated that this is a missile attack on Kabul. We have no independent confirmation of that. Yes, after the attack on the U.S. embassies in East Africa in 1998, the United States responded fairly quickly with missile attacks in a remote area of Afghanistan where it was said that U.S. intelligence had some indication that maybe Osama bin Laden or some of his units in operation were. But as these explosions light up the night sky in Kabul, the footage shown to you, courtesy of CNN, about flashes and flames in the Afghan capital, the source of those flames and explosions unknown. Now, a CNN reporter, Mr. Robertson, said, and I quote him, "There are missiles flying across the city, apparently large incoming missiles," unquote. This all happens, of course, hours after these major terrorist attacks in the United States. But one, there's been no confirmation of any missile attacks from the United States. You may note that David Martin, our very experienced Pentagon correspondent, said earlier that you could expect the United States to try to retaliate in some way. But whether this, what's happening in Kabul, Afghanistan now, is a retaliation, whether it is in fact a missile attack there, has not been confirmed. Certainly an experienced and reliable reporter on the scene, Mr. Robertson, says that he just says flatly there are missiles flying across the city. But one doesn't have to know much about cruise missiles to know that it's not always easy to determine when these missiles are coming into a city. This is not to refute in any way his report. It is simply doing what reporters do, and that is until we absolutely know from at least two sources that we have U.S. missile attacks on Kabul, Afghanistan, we're going to hold off with any confirmation. The best we can say to you is there have been flames and some explosions in Kabul, Afghanistan. It's a very volatile situation inside Afghanistan. While the Taliban, the radical Muslim strong men in government and political terms in Afghanistan, control most of the country, they do not control all of it. And just yesterday, indeed, the leader of the opposition, one of the opposition forces to the Taliban, was the victim of a suicide attack, explosive planted in a television camera that with Mr. Mossad almost wiped him out, or may have indeed killed him. All of that just to give you some sense of how volatile the situation is inside Afghanistan and how hard it is to nail down any facts. And while you no doubt have heard and will hear that the United States has sent missiles into Kabul, Afghanistan, we do not, I repeat, not have any confirmation of that. We have only the one report from a reporter, the CNN reporter.
All the information, then make a...
But we're not absolutely certain. In fact, we're not certain at all.